You weren't betrayed because you were weak. You were betrayed because you never learned the rules. No one taught you how to defend yourself. No one warned you that sometimes survival requires silence. That to endure, you may need to be ruthless. Since childhood, they told you to be good, be kind, be humble, be forgiving. But they never told you this. The world doesn't run on kindness. It runs on perception, and perception is rarely fair. You can be intelligent, you can be sincere, but if you don't understand how power works, if you don't know when to speak and when to disappear, you'll become prey, because in this game, naivety is a slow, polite suicide, and kindness without armor is a glowing target. A target for the ones who smile while draining you, for those who study your light, then extinguish it. The real question isn't how good you are. It's how much control you keep when cornered. Can you stay silent? Can you stare a traitor in the eyes and pretend not to see them? This isn't a lesson in morality. It's a survival code, a warning, because if you don't become sharper, more silent, more strategic, you won't need to be destroyed. You'll do it yourself, quietly, gradually, from the inside out. They told you being good was enough, that if you worked hard, loved deeply, stayed loyal, life would reward you. But they forgot to mention the cost. They forgot to warn you about the moments you'd be left standing alone. After giving everything, after showing up again and again, for people who never even looked back, they didn't mention the silence after the sacrifice, the empty room after the apology, the cold look in their eyes when they realized you were never dangerous enough to be respected. You believed life was fair, that if you just stayed kind, stayed humble, things would balance out. But life isn't balanced. It's brutal, and it feeds on the unaware. No one told you that in this world, perception is stronger than truth. That silence can be louder than words. That the one who walks away first always holds the power. They told you to be strong, but their version of strength meant swallowing your pain, nodding when you should have walked, apologizing while you were still bleeding. You thought loyalty was a virtue, but they used it like a chain, not to reward your presence, but to control your fear of absence. You weren't weak. You were just unarmed. And in a world where power is the only real currency, you paid with your peace. Over and over again. This is the pain no one warned you about. The pain of realizing the rules you were taught were never meant to protect you. They were meant to tame you. You became predictable, too forgiving, too available, too honest. In a game that runs on illusion, they saw your light. And instead of protecting it, they drained it. Because light, in the hands of the naive, becomes a beacon for predators. And here's the truth they don't teach. Kindness, without strategy, is a liability. Empathy, without boundaries, is an open wound. Love, without discernment, becomes self-destruction. They didn't prepare you for this world. They prepared you to survive in stories, in fairy tales, not in the shadows, not in the rooms where power is traded in silence, where emotion is currency, and appearances are everything. You keep wondering, why do the loudest voices win? Why do manipulators rise? Why do those who lie, cheat, and smile through their teeth seem to thrive? It's not because they're better. It's because they understand something you don't. They understand leverage. They understand how to make people feel. how to bend perception, and most of all, how to protect their energy like it's sacred. And you keep giving yours away, not because you're weak, but because no one taught you how to hold it. This world doesn't crush the strongest. It crushes the unaware. It rewards those who can detach, who can sit in the fire and not flinch, who can smile and still walk away. So if you're hurting, if you're confused about why they leave when you need them most, why your loyalty isn't returned, why your kindness gets overlooked, this is why. You were taught how to love, but not how to protect yourself while loving. You were taught how to give, but never when to stop. And now it's time to learn the part they left out. The part Machiavelli knew, that in a world of masks, you must become a mirror, reflect, reveal nothing, and let their nature expose itself. Because power, real power, is never given. It is taken, silently, strategically, without apology. They told you feeling deeply makes you human, that wearing your heart on your sleeve is brave, that emotional honesty is strength. But the world doesn't reward vulnerability. It studies it, and then it exploits it. You think people respect your openness. They don't. They observe it. They track your reactions. They watch where you flinch, where you break, what makes you bleed. And one day, they use it, not because they're evil, but because power requires leverage, and your emotions gave them the map. The person who wins in this world is not the loudest, not the strongest, but the most emotionally disciplined, the one who can feel everything but show nothing. Because emotions, in the wrong hands, are currency for thieves. And you've been handing out riches for free. They told you to speak your truth, to show your pain, to let yourself feel, but they never mentioned the cost. Because once you reveal your wounds, you're no longer mysterious. You're no longer a threat. You're predictable. You're accessible. You're controllable. The emotionless one isn't cold. They're calculated. They don't react. They respond. There's a difference. Reaction is impulsive. It leaks your power. Response is deliberate, measured, deadly when necessary. But you've been too focused on being understood. You forgot. Not everyone deserves to understand you. You think your tears show courage, that your softness will earn mercy. But it doesn't. It signals permission, and they push the knife deeper, not always out of malice. Sometimes, just because they can. So what happens next? You defend yourself. You over-explain. You overreact. And in doing so, you lose leverage. That's the trap. They provoke. They trigger. And suddenly, you're justifying reality to people who never intended to understand it. Meanwhile, they stay calm, composed, untouchable. You think silence means defeat, but silence is power. It makes people guess, scramble, project, and in their scrambling they reveal themselves. They underestimate the one who speaks last. But Machiavelli knew, the one who controls the tempo, controls the outcome. It's not about not feeling, it's about not leaking, it's about not bleeding in front of those who would drink from your wounds. To win in a world like this, you must be emotionally sovereign, able to sit in chaos without becoming it, able to feel the fire without letting it consume you. Think about it. The people who intimidate you the most aren't the loudest. They're the ones who observe, still, focused, unbothered, because they know who they are, and they don't need to prove it. You don't become powerful by reacting. You become powerful by mastering your signal, by learning to recognize which emotions are real and which ones are echoes from old wounds. The emotionless one wins, not because they're heartless, but because they're not enslaved by their heart. They love, they hurt, but they never let it override their strategy. And when the moment calls for action, they strike, not from impulse, but from clarity. Your emotions are not your enemy, but they're not your guide either. They are signals, not instructions. You must be able to stand in the storm and see clearly, to hear the insult and say nothing, to feel the betrayal and show nothing. Not because you're numb, but because you're watching, and in your watching, you gain power, you gain timing, you gain control, because when others explode, you remain. That's how the emotionless one always wins. By refusing to play a game they've already mastered. They told you kindness would open doors, that being good would make you unforgettable, that if you just loved hard enough, stayed soft enough, waited long enough, they'd see your worth. But they lied, because society doesn't reward kindness. It exploits it. Kindness without boundaries becomes servitude, and servitude is silent slavery. You think being kind makes you noble, but they see it as weakness, not because kindness is wrong, but because most people aren't strong enough to handle it. They mistake your generosity for guilt, your silence for submission, your patience for permission. You become the one who always says yes, who always forgives, who always absorbs the mess. And then you wonder why you feel hollow, why your presence is expected, but never cherished. Here's the truth. Society doesn't want you strong. It wants you agreeable. It wants you predictable, emotionally available, on demand. It teaches you that your value is in what you can give, not who you are. So you keep performing, keep smiling, keep shrinking. They clap for the helper, but they forget the helper has wounds too. Wounds no one ever asks about, because you've trained them not to. You've become useful, and that's why they keep you close. Not because they love you, but because you're convenient. Machiavelli warned us, in a world built on illusion, kindness must be weaponized, or it will be devoured. You keep thinking kindness will save you. It won't. It'll bury you, beneath their chaos, beneath responsibilities that were never yours, beneath the lie that to be loved, you must be needed. But love that requires utility isn't love. It's transaction. And the more you give without discernment, the more invisible you become, not because you're not enough, but because you're everywhere, accessible, affordable, replaceable. That's the lie, that kindness alone is power. It's not. Kindness without strength is noise. Kindness without distance is self-erasure. And kindness without clarity is a mask you wear while disappearing. They told you to always be nice. But niceness is not kindness. Niceness is fear dressed in politeness. Fear of confrontation. Fear of rejection. Fear of being alone. True kindness requires spine. It requires the word no. It requires silence where noise is expected. Boundaries where access is assumed. And sometimes walking away with nothing but your dignity. That's the kindness that disrupts, that rewrites power, that forces people to confront their own entitlement. You think you're losing people when you speak your truth. No, you're losing the illusion of connection, the kind built on you, always saying yes, always bending, always being the bigger person. But here's the brutal truth. Always being the bigger person is how you lose yourself. You become the cushion for their chaos, the therapist for their trauma, the savior for their sabotage. And when you collapse, when you finally break, they won't remember your kindness. They'll resent your silence because you stopped performing. This is why you must stop confusing kindness with availability. You're not here to be anyone's emotional crutch. You're not here to soften every blow. You're not here to be digested, tolerated, or used. You're here to stand. Clear, sharp, kind, but never naive again. Because kindness is not about how much you give. It's about how well you protect what you have. Power isn't about truth. It's about perception. And no one understood that better than Machiavelli. The crowd doesn't follow what's real. They follow what looks real. Appearances matter more than facts. And the man who controls the image controls the outcome. You don't have to be right. You just have to appear certain. You don't have to be moral. You just have to look like you're on the right side. Because perception is the battlefield. And most people don't even know they're at war. You keep trying to prove yourself. You explain. You clarify. You show your heart. But while you're revealing the truth, someone else is crafting the illusion. And the world rewards illusion. That's why Machiavelli never told you to be good. He told you to appear good, to master the art of seeming, to wear the right mask, for the right room, at the right time. You think that's manipulation? Maybe it is. But so is every advertisement you've ever seen. So is every politician's smile. So is every carefully curated, authentic post online. The world isn't waiting for your truth. It's waiting to assign you a role. And if you don't choose it, you'll be cast in someone else's play. Control how they see you, or accept being misunderstood. There is no neutral perception. Every silence you give, every word you speak, every posture you hold, builds an image, whether you want it or not. So ask yourself, are you sculpting that image, or letting it be sculpted for you? You think people are relating to who you are, but most are relating to the version of you that best fits their needs. The calm one, the funny one, the one who doesn't disrupt. And the moment you break that script, they panic, because their version of you starts to fall apart. This is why power begins with self-awareness. You can't control perception. If you're blind to the role you're already playing, Machiavelli warned rulers, never show your full hand. Never reveal your entire intent. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let them underestimate. Because when they don't know what you're capable of, they can't defend against it. Use half-truths like mirrors. Show just enough of what they expect, but never the full picture. Keep the real power behind the curtain. That's how you move. Not like a soldier, like a ghost. Calculated, deliberate, intransable. Control the narrative, not by screaming, not by defending, but by designing the atmosphere you move in. Perception is a frame, and whoever builds the frame defines the story. You think you're being real, but realness without strategy is self-sabotage with noble intentions. So ask again, what do people see when they see you? Is it what you chose or what they needed? You don't need to lie. You need to understand. Truth is a tool, and how you deliver it is what determines your position. Because in the end, it's not the truth that changes the world. It's who controls the lens that truth is seen through. You were taught to value loyalty, to stand by others, to believe in bonds that last. But loyalty, in its pure form, is rare. And more often than not, it's a lie. Because people aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to their needs. And the moment you no longer serve those needs, the bond breaks. It's not betrayal. It's business. It's instinct. It's survival. You think loyalty means permanence. But in this world, loyalty is a contract written in disappearing ink. It holds until it doesn't. And when it ends, you'll be the last to know. Machiavelli warned, men are fickle. As long as you give them comfort, hope, advantage, they'll call you king. But take one thing away and the same people who praised you will turn without hesitation. That's not pessimism. That's realism. You gave your heart. They gave you conditions. You gave loyalty. They gave you convenience. And when things got uncomfortable, they disappeared. Because most people don't love you. They love how they feel around you. They love the version of you that caters, that listens, that fixes. And when that version fades, so do they. You think it hurts because it's unfair. But what really hurts is realizing you built your world on assumptions that if you were good, you'd be safe. If you were loyal, you'd be loved. But loyalty untested is fantasy. Only pressure reveals truth. Only loss reveals alignment. Look around. How many stayed when you had nothing left to give? How many chose you when you weren't performing? How many loved you? Not the version they benefited from, but the one beneath the roles. Loyalty isn't measured at your peak. It's measured in your fall. And most people vanish before you hit the ground. So stop betting your soul on the myth. Stop confusing shared history with shared future. Stop calling it loyalty when it's just habit, obligation, or comfort. True loyalty is rare, and it's quiet. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need titles. It doesn't need your destruction to prove it exists. But most of what you've called loyalty was dependency in disguise, control wrapped in affection, manipulation sold as support. And if you don't learn to see it, you'll keep handing your trust to people who only know how to hold you when it's easy. Machiavelli never taught you to expect loyalty. He taught you to manage it, to reward it when it appears, to test it before you trust it, to never build your castle on ground that hasn't been shaken. Because if loyalty hasn't been tested, it's not loyalty. It's potential. And you can't build strategy on potential, only on proof, only on patterns, only on pressure. So what do? You stop expecting permanence. You stop needing guarantees. You start watching patterns. Instead of promises, you read actions, not words. And above all, you stop betraying yourself just to believe someone else won't. Loyalty should never cost your boundaries, should never demand your silence, should never require you to erase yourself. Because loyalty that asks for your soul isn't loyalty, it's ownership. And you don't belong to anyone. If you don't build your own strategy, you'll be used in someone else's. And if you don't learn the rules of this game, you'll keep losing. To people who do, it's not enough to be aware. You have to be prepared. Because in a world driven by control, passivity is suicide. So how do you stop getting crushed? You stop waiting for fairness. You stop begging for decency. You stop thinking the world owes you kindness just because you offered it first. You don't get crushed because you're not good enough. You get crushed because you were never trained to protect yourself. So the first step is to unlearn Unlearn the belief that love equals self-sacrifice. Unlearn the idea that silence earns respect. Unlearn the instinct to explain your boundaries. Because power doesn't explain. Power moves. Quietly. Intentionally. Without apology. You want to stop being the one who gets left behind. Then stop being the most available. Stop being the one who breaks first. Stop being the one who needs to be understood. Before acting, you don't need validation. You need clarity. You don't need more people to like you. You need fewer people to access you. Control your environment. Control your presence. Control your energy. Not by becoming rigid, but by becoming precise. Set boundaries that don't need to be spoken. Let your energy communicate. What your words no longer will. And when people test you, don't explain. Respond through behavior, through withdrawal, through indifference. Because that's where power lives, in the ability to detach, without losing yourself. Machiavelli didn't say to be cruel. He said to be strategic. Mercy without control is weakness. Compassion without limits is erosion. You don't become powerful by being feared. You become powerful by being unreadable, unpredictable, unshakable. You don't chase. You calibrate. You observe. You let others reveal themselves. Then decide if they've earned access to your mind, your time, your essence. You want to stop getting crushed. Then, stop showing your blueprint to people who only came to copy it. Stop giving people the benefit of the doubt before they've earned your trust. And most of all, stop betraying yourself in the name of connection. You're not here to be liked. You're here to become formidable. And that doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming whole. So what do you do now? You stop explaining your worth. You start moving. Like someone who already knows it. You stop hoping they'll change. You change the room you're standing in. Or you leave. You stop waiting for them to see your light. You become the one who turns it off until they've earned the right to witness it again. You stop seeking peace with people who create chaos, just to feel alive. You stop making yourself smaller, softer, safer, just to be chosen. Because the truth is, you don't need to be chosen. You need to choose yourself so clearly that anyone who doesn't rise to meet you disqualifies themselves automatically. That's how you stop being crushed, by becoming the pressure. They can't apply, the silence. They can't decode, the standard. They can't manipulate. You become your own kingdom, your own law, your own weapon, and your own sanctuary. You don't need to become ruthless. You need to become real. Not the version they trained you to be. Not the mask that made you accepted. But the presence that doesn't apologize for existing, because the world doesn't change when you speak louder. It changes when your silence means something, when your withdrawal has weight, when your no isn't followed by guilt, when your boundaries don't need a backstory. You've spent too many years asking the wrong question. Will they still love me if I change? But the real question is, will you still love yourself if you don't? Because if you don't evolve, you'll keep living the same chapter. You'll keep begging the villain to become the hero. They won't. What needs to change is the one who keeps handing out forgiveness before anyone ever earned it. What needs to change is the one who keeps diluting their truth just to be palatable. What needs to change is the one who learned to equate being useful with being worthy. You are not here to be convenient. You are not here to be soft enough to hold. You are here to become so deeply aligned that no projection can bend you. No absence can shatter you. No betrayal can define you. Let them mislabel you. Let them misunderstand your stillness. Let them fear your silence. Because when they do, you've finally stepped outside their control. This is your power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that endures. Quiet, precise, unmoved. You don't need more words. You need more presence. You don't need to prove anything. You need to remember everything. Remember the moments you betrayed your own gut just to be liked. Remember the silence you swallowed, so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Remember the times you begged for loyalty from people who couldn't even give honesty. That was the cost. But this is the shift. This is the moment you stop shrinking. Stop pleasing. Stop performing. And start moving like what you are. Not broken, not bitter, but awake. The kind of awake that makes people uncomfortable. The kind of awake that no longer needs permission. The kind of awake that never gets crushed again. You don't need to become ruthless. You need to become real. Not the version they trained you to be. Not the mask that made you accepted. But the presence that doesn't apologize for existing. Because the world doesn't shift when you scream for it. It shifts when your silence carries weight. When your withdrawal rewrites the room. When your no stands without shaking, without guilt, without a second glance. You've been asking the wrong question. Will they still love me if I change? But here's the one that matters. Will you still respect yourself? If you don't, because if you don't evolve, you will replay the same betrayal. Not theirs, yours. You'll betray your standards to stay liked, your truth to stay safe, your essence to stay chosen. What needs to change is not the people who keep walking away. It's the part of you that keeps opening the door. What needs to change is not how much you love. It's how much of yourself you abandon. To be loved. You are not here to be digested. You are not here to be predictable. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to become undeniable to yourself. Let them misunderstand you. Let them fear your silence. Let them fall away. Because when they do, you finally stand alone, but not empty, not weak, not lost. You stand sovereign. This is your power, not the kind that begs. The kind that breathes without needing permission. The kind that doesn't prove. It simply exists. So, stop shrinking. Stop explaining. Stop waiting. And start walking like what you are. Not broken. Not bitter. But awake. The kind of awake that never gets crushed again.